The mission of IFE is to harness the power of data, innovation, and soft diplomacy in the global community. Bev and Mayor, you are both IFE veterans and have IFE DNA, continuing the tradition of distinguished special guests from Nobel Prize laureates to Supreme Court justices and everything in between. I want to applaud our IFE leadership with us today. IFE co-founder Jim Valentine, IFE trustee Kelsey Valentine, a very special IFE steward, the icon and the legend, former FBI and CIA Director Judge William Webster, and Linda. And of course, Chairman of the Board of Stewards, Marcy Robinson. Marcy, are you in and you want to say a word? Marcy?
Coach, she's having trouble getting in, so I just resent her the link.
Okay, we'll come back to her then. Elise, send one to Jim Valentine too. A big shout out to our lead support, Microsoft, Charter Communications, Matt Cutts, Todd Park and Amy Geng, Dr. R. David, and there's Marcy.
Oh, there's
Marcy. I'm
Marcy.
back. Go ahead, I'll pick up when you're ready.
Okay, I'm just giving a shout out to our big deal supporters, Dr. R. David Edelman and Joanne, John Paul Farmer, and Britt McCandless and Crown Castle. As always, thank you all for your generous support. Now, Marcy Robinson, Chairman of our Board of Stewards, I know you wanted to say a word or two. Please.
Kathy, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been so much fun being your friend, and look at all the friends around us, and think of all the years between us all. And congratulations on nearing 3 decades of bringing fascinating people together for good reason and with great impact. Watching you operate IFE for more than 26 years has been stunning. Maybe it's because of the skills that you have as a tennis pro that has always made IFE so agile and able to pivot to bring the right people together at the right time. For example, the Regional Leaders Summit. It was the very first time that the leaders of DC, Virginia, and Maryland got together, not only socially, but for collaboration. And how did we get there? Well, in 1998, your 5-year-old daughter, Christina, came home from school, from the Washington International School, and said, "Mommy, I met someone at school today who wants to be the next mayor of DC." And years later, it was the man that Christina met who became Mayor Williams and who spearheaded, along with you, the Regional Leaders Summit in 2000. And again, you are quick to realize the talent in the room and build a team, not just through worthwhile discussions, but also on the tennis court and golf course. And Beverly Perry is not only a dear friend, but a mentor and a quiet but powerful force for so many good things that happen and will happen in our nation's capital. And for example, when DC becomes a state, I think we're all going to have to say thank you to Beverly Perry. But most importantly, Beverly Perry won the IFE's Ambassador Cup for golf, which was awarded by both Mayor Williams and yourself. And Elise, can I ask you to do me a favor and unmute everybody at this time? Just unmute everyone's mic so we can all give Coach a healthy round of applause because it's well deserved.
Namaste, namaste.
Back to you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. That was something. Is Mayor Williams on yet? Welcome to our extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassadors from the Bahamas and Thailand, and welcome to all the diplomats from Singapore and Kazakhstan, the EU and Laos, and our friends from around the world, Brussels, London, Sweden, San Francisco, LA, Boston, and Chicago. And welcome to the White House Presidential Innovation Fellows, United States Digital Service, Tech Congress, TTS, and Coding It Forward. These are the tech superheroes with us today. Thank you all for your hashtag civic tech service. You are a force. IFE's free computer science at the University of Southern California Coding Camp is in our 4th week of distance learning with over 800 kids this summer to date enrolled. IFE has been leading the way for diversity with computer science at SC for 6 years running now, and we are so proud. And here now to introduce our speakers is New York City CTO John Paul Farmer, the man that led IFE, along with Todd Park and IFE Innovation Steward, Amy Geng, to lean into tech 8 years ago. John was honored with the IFE Distinguished Service Award in 2019 for his hashtag Civic Tech service, his years of leadership at IFE, and co-founding of the White House Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. Now, a fun fact about John Paul is he played professional baseball. So John, take it away.
Well, thank you, Coach. Thanks so much. We are thrilled to have Mayor Williams and Beverly Perry with us today. And one of the lessons that their being with us makes me think about is always talk to strangers. You heard it earlier from Marcy and Kelsey and that experience of how they met Mayor Williams. And the truth is, I wouldn't be here today if I had not talked to strangers. Back in March of 2006 in downtown San Diego, I was having breakfast reading a newspaper. Yes, a physical newspaper, because it was 2006. We did not have smartphones yet. We still read those things. And I started talking to the couple next to me at breakfast at the Hyatt. And it turned out that their names were Tony and Diane, and they were from Washington, D.C. And I told them my sister lived in D.C., and we chatted a little bit. And eventually I got around to asking what they did for a living. And Tony responded that he worked in government. That was his response. And a little more prodding got him to admit, well, I'm the mayor. And I thought that was pretty darn cool. And as you all know, he did some amazing work between 1999 and 2007 in the role as mayor. And now he leads the federal city council and continues to do great work. And I've got a lot to thank Tony for in my own life, because after we met there in San Diego, when he learned that I was not too long ago at that point, a professional baseball player, Tony invited me to come to DC for the Washington Nationals home opener. And I got there bright and early because I like watching batting practice. And there was only one other person there while we waited for Mayor Williams to show up. And I went over and talked to that woman, and she introduced herself to me as Coach Kemper. And that's how we met, and that's how I ended up getting involved in IFE all those years ago. And at IFE, in these early events, when Coach Kemper was really the only person who knew me and had invited me because of that connection we'd made at a ball game, I remember meeting Beverly Perry there. And Beverly was consistently involved. And what struck me was, in addition to how kind and nice she was to me, a perfect stranger who was a lot younger than most of the people in those rooms, was how knowledgeable she was. She just knew all of the issues of the day. And that is no surprise to anyone when they look at what she does now as senior advisor to Mayor Bowser, where she is the right-hand lady, as the mayor has said. And I saw a tweet recently where the mayor credited Beverly publicly as her, I think it was a quote-unquote DC statehood guiding light. And of all the things that you can honor someone with, fighting for representation for 700,000 people, that's an incredible thing to be known for. And that's the kind of praise that we've just seen the tip of the iceberg of the work that Beverly does behind the scenes. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from both Beverly and Mayor Williams, because several years after all this, in 2010, after I'd met Beverly and I'd met Tony, Tony's the one who suggested I meet with key people in the Obama administration in 2010. And here we are all today. So talking to strangers changed my life for the better. I'm so grateful that I've gotten to know both Tony and Beverly, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their perspectives on what's happening in our nation's capital today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Anthony Williams and Senior Advisor to the Mayor, Beverly Perry.
So Bev, you have to unmute. Bev, unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yep, now you're great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John Paul. And let me just say, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for years of friendship, all of the introductions. And, you know, I think back about meeting John McCain at the Institute, and just so many incredible people. And Marcy, my friend, thank you so much, Marcy, your husband, Richard, son, David. Thank you to all of you. And to Jim Valentine, thanks to Jim. I love chatting with Jim. So it's been a great ride with the Institute. It's been a great ride in the city. So let me just talk about, you know, the path, charting the path forward for our city. And, you know, talking about the city, I can't talk about the city without talking about my leader. And for those of you that do not know Mayor Bowser, let me just introduce her to you in conversation. Mayor Bowser is a scholar of government. She is in a job that was made for her. She is very fiscally responsible, and she's very transparent and ethically responsible. She's very high energy, and I think she lives by the motto that the best is yet to come. And she says that because regardless of how well things are going, she's always looking for a new, fresh idea. So she's known sort of in some circles as the fresh idea mayor. And she is always challenging us to reimagine how operations could be done differently. And for the tech folks, she is very technology savvy, that she is a lover of technology, a lover of data. So with the foundation about my mayor, what's happening in DC? And Kathy, you talked about last week was the most incredible week. To think about, you know, and I've met with so many people that have been out there laboring for 50 years talking about statehood. And no House of Congress has ever voted affirmatively to approve statehood for DC. And to have that vote, you know, and working on behalf of the mayor, it was a very incredible moment. We're still gloating about it. You know, it's just a big moment for the city. So the big question is, what's next? We have to go to the Senate that's led by the Republicans. And I believe we're in an incredible moment. And for one reporter that asked me on Friday whether I thought it was going to just die in the Senate, I said, absolutely no. I said, you know, if I'd listened to the no-sayers, we would have never gotten through the House. So I think we're at an incredible moment in history. And surprisingly, Senator Stabenow has called the mayor and last week had her address the Democratic caucus. And tomorrow, Delegate Norton and the mayor will be testifying before the Democratic Policy Communications Committee. And so I think we are on a road. I mean, we have to get introduced to the Senate. And the thing that I've learned when I came to work for the mayor and she asked me to take on the statehood issue, and she said, we have to move the ball further than has ever been moved before. But no matter what you do, it cannot involve me going back to jail because I'm never going back to jail again. So we had to come up with ideas. And so we decided it was an educational campaign. And we believe our educational campaign has brought us to this moment. So, and part of the educational campaign and what a lot of people are not focusing on is that representation of Washington, D.C. in the Senate is not just a D.C. issue. It's a regional issue. It hurts this region. And so I think recently, as we have seen, you know, people like Steny Hoyer, the majority leader, had never signed on to the bill before. When we went to meet with him and laid out for him how important it would be to the region, he signed on. And last week, he was an incredible leader in leading that vote. And the reason we talk about it as a regional issue, if you look at the population of Maryland, Virginia, and DC, you're talking about over 15 million people. And we only have 4 senators for this long region. And then you could go out west and you can look at a small cluster of states, 5 states, that have 1/10 of the representation in the Senate. And they have 5 million people, all 5 states together. So the underrepresentation is a problem for the region, and the senators in the region have come to know that. You know, and representation in the Senate was just brought to the forefront of everyone when the Senate took up the CARES Act for this major pandemic that we are in, COVID-19. And I think we have tried to educate everybody that we were shorted $755 million because the District of Columbia, although we're not a state, in every government program, we've always been treated as a state for federal funding. When it came to the CARES Act, we were treated as a territory, which meant that instead of getting a minimum of $1.25 billion, we received a share of $1.25 billion that we split with the territories, and we ended up with $495 million. Now, why is that so important and so unfair? For a lot of reasons. But you know, we came to this in good financial conditions so we could manage. But what people didn't understand is, and we have since pointed this out, is that Washington, D.C. doesn't just prepare for Washington, D.C. We prepare for America, for anybody that comes to visit in Washington, D.C. So at any given time, any given day, you check the hospital patients population in Washington, D.C. It's more than 45% from people out of state. But we have to prepare for that. So in this COVID pandemic, we had to build hospital beds for a population that we didn't know. Our city population every day on a normal day before the COVID pandemic doubles during the day. So we are a population of 706,000. And during the day, we're a population of 1.3 million. And so when you are in a situation of a pandemic, you have to have medical facilities to serve that group. So, you know, timing is everything. And I talked about my mayor being fiscally responsible. We came to the pandemic in very good financial shape. We had a $200 million reserve. And so we were able to, so far, we've been able to manage and make all those preparations that was necessary, including building out the state-of-the-art hospital in our convention center with 450 beds. We haven't had to use them, but we have that preparation. And to date, we have developed one of the best testing programs in the country. And our numbers are going down. We're testing over 1,000 people every day. And so far, we've tested over 100,000 people. Only 75,000 are our residents, but we have people that work in the city that are first responders and other kind of work. And so we've tested 100,000 people, 75,000 residents. And we feel that we're in pretty good shape. This morning, every day at 8 o'clock, we get a briefing from the team to tell us what the numbers were yesterday, the day before, how many people tested positive, how many people that have succumbed to the virus. And this morning we had 32 people tested positive and no one. And it's rare that we have a day that we haven't had a single death. And we believe that with our testing and tracing that we have, our numbers are really looking good. And you probably heard earlier, back in March, we were one of the hot spots, which was the other reason we thought it was so unlikely that we wouldn't receive our share as a state. So with that, I said that we had come to this in good financial shape. That's one story. But how do we get there? I think it's because we are economically, we are sound. We just hit a bump in the road. And thanks to Tony, when he brought baseball back, we have built an economic base based on sports and entertainment. And we have, in the past 2 years, we've had 3 national championships, baseball, hockey, and our women's basketball. So we think we are a city of winners. John Paul, I know you can appreciate that, our baseball championship. And we also a city of museums, but they are owned by the feds. So we have created our own arts, our art and culture. We say we are a city of sports, entertainment, arts, and culture. And as you know, we are a city of mirrors. We have on walls and streets. And so we have our art displayed outside because all the museums are federal. And, you know, we became a leader with our Black Lives Matter Plaza, a major mirror at 16th and K. And so those are the kinds of things that we are doing. But we believe that a world-class city, it has sports, it has arts, culture, it has good food, restaurants, we have all of that. And, you know, as I said, we hit a bump in the road, but we think all that stuff is coming back. And one thing we have done to encourage arts in our city, we have an arts grant program. We give to the major theaters, but we also give to just local artists and commission them to do different projects. So our path forward is we want to be like, I don't know how, I didn't ask the mayor about this, but I'm going to say we'll be in the top 10. So that could include #1 of the world-class cities. And we are reimagining things like Franklin Park. We work with the Park Service for 5 years to secure Franklin Park. And you probably have seen it between 13th and 15th. And it's a lot of tents and this week is a lot of news about the homeless tents being relocated. And so the question to me last week from a reporter was about that the relocation of the homeless people there have anything to do with the recent protests. And the answer to that is absolutely no. It is a 5-year project coming to fruition. And it's going to be amazing because we looked at New York City, we looked at Bryant Park, and the mayor and I took a trip to Bryant Park in New York, and she said, we have to have an urban park. Every world-class city has a park downtown. And so we are envisioning and reimagining Franklin Park with playgrounds for small kids, because we have kids living downtown now, and they don't have a playground, with cafes, with fountains, with a place to go and just enjoy the outdoor space. And another thing is we have 20 million visitors come to Washington every year. Tourism is a major attraction for us. So we will have bathrooms. We'll have places downtown where our visitors can go without going into a restaurant, and it'll be attractive. It'll be a place that people will want to be. So we're going to continue. I can't end this without saying, the mayor submitted her budget to the council, a $16 billion budget. And the mayor likes to make sure that the budget has an acronym. My budget is HOPE: health, opportunity, prosperity, and equity is her budget to the council. And the budget will continue the investments in education. We increased our education budget by 3% this year. It will continue small business grants. It will continue our investment in health of our community. As a matter of fact, today we had the health committee of the council convene a hearing on the mayor's proposal to build a new hospital in Southeast Washington that would be run by George Washington University Hospital. And also we're making an investment in Howard University Hospital. A world-class city has very good health medical services. And we're going to continue our investment in affordable housing. The budget has $100 million in the Housing Trust Fund, and job training, and all kinds of programs. We have a cadet program in job training. A kid in high school can decide they want to become a police officer. In Washington, D.C., you have to have 2 years of college to become a police officer. The kid can become a student, I'm sorry. A student can become a cadet in high school, and the city will pay for the 2 years of college, send them to college, and then they can join the Metropolitan Police Force. It's those types of job programs that the mayor has created. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to say, we're taking a little financial hit, but we believe that our future is bright. And so we look forward to it. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Beverly. Thank you for those remarks. Really, incredible to hear the insider perspective on what's happening in DC today, in particular, the conversations and the progress around statehood. Mayor Williams has been able to join us, so we're very excited to have him here as well. Tony, it's great to see you. And I want you to know that I told everyone before you joined the story of how we met in San Diego way back in 2006. But I want to give you the floor to make some remarks that you'd like to the group, and then we can transition into a conversation.
Yeah, Beverly, sorry I'm late, Coach. Sorry I'm late. I was doing some chores here around the house and I got caught up in my chores and I just forgot the time. I really apologize. My mind was in vacation mode, so I apologize to all of you and certainly to Beverly. But, it is a special, I think the mayor and Beverly and her team, John, the mayor's appointed, I think, a first-rate cabinet. And I think part of the reason why DC has been and gotten into the position it's in and is really propelling forward is that up through Mayor Bowser, you've had a series of mayors who've appointed really good teams. And this mayor is no exception. I have gotten to know Dr. Nesbitt, just superb. Her director of human services, a really hard job, heading up the homeless initiative by the mayor. Zelliger, isn't that her name, Beverly?
Yes.
Absolutely, first rate. And certainly, I call him His Eminence, but Rashad Young, the city administrator, just fine people. So I think, I think every good executive will always hire people who are smarter than, you are. And I think the mayor has really appointed an excellent team. And this is good because they're faced with, it's almost like the book of Exodus in the Bible, the number of calamities and plagues that we're facing from, the repercussions from the killing of George Floyd, which I'll talk about in a second. Certainly the COVID-19 and the mismanagement of that at a federal level. The worst federal relationship I have ever read about, certainly, and seen in DC. You'd have to go back to the Civil War. It's just horrible. That's my own personal opinion. I think the president really, the mayor and her team have shown incredible accommodation and deference to the presidency and to the executive office. And I think that the mayor had no choice but to stand up for DC in order to maintain both her political and let alone her moral authority. And I think she did a great job with that. And then lastly, we're facing with the economic repercussions of this. It's like the story of the burning bridge where we have to go forward because the burning bridge is behind us. But unlike a battle where we know, well, if we go forward, we'll win the battle, here there's an uncertainty. You talk to some economists and we're in a deep V and we'll be out of this shortly. And you talk to others and we're more of a Nike swoosh. Some people are saying we're in a kind of L for the foreseeable future. So, to manage it with all these challenges, it's very, very difficult. And it's especially difficult where something like racial injustice, the disparate impact of COVID-19, let alone, with George Floyd, people tell me, what do I make of this? I say it's like a comet. And what the hell do I mean by a comet? What we know from high school physics, you've got this junk out beyond the solar system in a orbit parallel to the planets. And periodically, some of the big planets disturb the orbit of this junk. And because this orbit's been disturbed, there's this event caused by these forces millions of years ago. You end up seeing this comet. It could be every 40 years, 50 years, 70 years. The analogy I make is that there have been forces at work in our country 50 years, 100 years, 200 years ago. And when you see these issues of police brutality, it's like looking at a snapshot of forces that began decades and decades ago that haven't really been corrected. I grew up in LA. I don't know if you all grew up in LA. We had the Watts riots in LA in 1965, police brutality. We had Rodney King, like an encore, another riot. That's just in one city, and I could go on and on and on. So just, the thing that keeps me awake is this tremendous amount of uncertainty, but the thing that keeps me optimistic and feeling that the jar is half full, and I'm not just blowing smoke, is that you've got Beverly and the mayor's team. I really am you know, I would support the mayor because I believe in supporting the mayor because, you know, when I was mayor, there was no one really around who was a mayor to support me. So I really feel it's important to support the mayor. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for the unitary executive. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, I support the mayor, but I also support her because I think she's doing a damn good job. So there you go. And Coach, thank you for really putting this together at this very important time in the district and in the DMV.
Well, thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Mayor Williams, and thank you, Ms. Beverly Perry, for your very informative and insightful remarks. So now we would like to welcome questions from the audience. You can submit questions by clicking at the bottom of your window and onto the chat window and submit questions that way. Let's see. Okay, Jennifer Rudy from Microsoft.
Okay, well, I just ran and put on my t-shirt, everybody. So.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
See? 3 kids in, thank you. So I have 3 kids in DC public schools, and I'm really happy with, I've seen some great progress, and you mentioned a little bit about education, but I'm interested in knowing the mayor's thoughts on, and this is more about Mayor Bowser in terms of how to keep investing in public education.
Well, I think I mentioned that despite the loss of revenue, the projected loss of revenue, we know we're going to have a loss of revenue. The mayor increased the educational budget by 3%. So she said that is not a place that we're going to sacrifice because we're making progress and we don't want to interrupt that progress. So she's very highly committed to education. So I don't know if you have, the only thing that may get delayed in education, you know, we have the school modernization program going, and we have some of the most beautiful schools. Every year we, you know, build another new school, modernize another school. Some of those capital projects may get set back a little bit. I didn't go through the budget to see which capital projects may get set back, but I know that, you know, you just got to give someplace. And so you would rather make sure you spend the money on the education, the technology, and, you know, wait on the capital project.
Thank you. Mr. Richard Shore, who's on the Committee for Reopening, DC Reopening, has a question. Richard?
I think that's actually Marcy, even though her it's Marcy, but her computer unfortunately says Richard Shore, which I'm gonna get an earful about after this get together is over.
Yes, you're in big trouble, but
I'm always in big trouble.
So the quick question is for Beverly and for Mayor Williams. First of all, thank you both for taking the time to join us today. Can you put in clearer historical terms the fight for DC statehood and how you arrived at this great moment for the city on with the vote in the House and moving forward? I know that Beverly, you and the mayor, you said met with Steny Hoyer and I'm assuming other House leadership to get to this point. But if you can put it in the context, and Mayor Williams talked about, you know, decades of issues that have been unraveling before our eyes, and if you could just put it together for us in a historical context, I think it would shed some light on how we got to where we are today. Thank you.
Well, Marcy, for one thing, when we started looking at the statehood campaign, it was an activist campaign that was built, grounded on just marches and protests, sitting in the street, going to jail. we took this to an educational campaign. And one thing that we have done is we've gotten the business community involved. We have educated the business community. There is a business group, and Tony can talk to you about this, that is also set out to do some education around statehood. But you know, if you're asking me about the history, we have gone back because we know that in the House, which is majority Democrats, and we are believed to have, with statehood, to have two, I mean, the thought is that we would have two Democratic senators and a Democratic representative, which has been part of our punishment. I think back in the 70s, someone said that the city could not have statehood because we were too poor, we were too Black, and we were too Democratic, too liberal. The 4-2s is what was supposed to be our obstacle. But, you know, we have gone back, and since then, we've taken a new look at statehood, and we've done some recent research, and we have found that the history of the District of Columbia is grounded in slavery. And it is it's a history that has not been talked about. And the mayor has expressed a willingness to, in this educational campaign, to talk about that history, that, you know, the founders, there was a lot of concern, even in the ratification of our Constitution, about carving out a district that would not have representation and would not have a vote in the Congress. But the thought is that the district would be set aside for slave labor, that no people working in the government would live here full time. So the slaves were not entitled to a vote. And so that's the way the history of the city began. And we have just uncovered some of that, and and the mayor has expressed some willingness to talk about it.
Thank you. Well, here, the next one is a tough one from the audience. It says, during this time of recovery, we are seeing signs of a political machine coming to the fore with successful council candidates with connections to Attorney General Carl Racine. Please share your thoughts about this. Mayor Williams or Ms. Perry, would either of you like to make a comment regarding this?
You know, Carl's very competent, very capable, highly educated, professional. You know, it's hard to be in office and make tough decisions. It's easy to run against someone in office and promise everybody you know, chicken in every pot, a car in every garage. And I think, you know, I'm all for the general direction of the Democrat, certainly I'm for community, I'm for democracy. But my problem with democratic socialism, forget about national economics and policy. Okay, let's just talk about local. You only have a local balance sheet on which to write out all these policy prescriptions, and it's not unlimited. And my problem with Carl is he's just feeding into this, you know, notion that, you know, we can have our pie and eat it too. And I think it's going to come back to haunt us. And I always tell people, you know, when I came around in 1995, the reason why the district was in the position it's in is everybody likes to think the reason we were in the position we were in is because Marion Barry. Clearly, Marion in his later years was distracted and wasn't minding the store. Management, big problem. Lack of revenue related to our lack of representation, big problem. But a big driver of our problems was we promised everything to everybody. Now, back then, it was particularly pernicious because we couldn't do anything for anybody. But even now, where the government is capable and is more competent, you're still going to run into trouble if you try to address, and I know I sound like big wet blanket pulling the punch bowl, but I'm sorry. You can't solve national problems on your own on a local budget. That's where we're going to get into trouble. And that's my problem with Carl and the Democratic Socialists. You know, and a lot of people played a part in this. We brought all these new people to DC, 100,000 plus people moving into the city. Good. One of the downsides of that is they forget we were broke.
Thank you for your frank comments, Mayor Williams.
I hope you're not a big fan of Carl.
All right, so we have many questions here. In the interest of time, from Betty Ann Tanner at the Congressional Club, she would like to hear about reopening plans, and also, are there any plans about the 2021 presidential inauguration?
I think it's too soon to talk about the presidential inauguration. I mean, we don't know. We keep hearing that there is going to be, we haven't seen the worst of COVID yet. And so if we were in a situation where our numbers were spiking back like the way they were in March, I don't think people would, I don't think the president, whomever it may be at that time, would want to bring in a large congregate of people in a epidemic environment. We can't envision that. So I think it's probably too early to talk about the inauguration.
David Ellerman has a question for both of you guys. David?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much. And I really just want to acknowledge the fact that this fight for DC statehood is something that, as Marcy pointed out, goes back decades, is a function of responsible leadership that we have had at the city level. And, you know, both of you represent such important public service that is taking place right now. And as DC voter and taxpayer, I'm just so thrilled to be able to be a part of that and to have this leadership happening right now. I guess the question that I wanted to ask is a little bit further on what Marcy said. I'm wondering if both of you can help us get a little bit inside of what you're hearing on Capitol Hill about DC statehood. I watched the hearings in the Senate and I've seen this conversation. I guess the question I have, which you should feel free to sidestep if it's too pointed, is are there any arguments left against DC statehood on Capitol Hill that are not at their core partisan? We heard a lot about partisan dynamics here and a lot about the political question. I'm just wondering what's left. Is there a substantive other side here, or is this, like so many issues across our world, just stuck in the fractious political moment that we're in?
David, I'll let the mayor talk about this, but I don't think so. You know, they thought we couldn't manage, and the mayor talked about the days of Marion Barry, and at that time it was like we were too irresponsible. But now, I mentioned the fact that when we were hit with the pandemic, we were in good financial shape. And the reason we could manage and create testing and all that, we have a AAA bond rating. We had $200 million in reserve. We are the envy of most states. I mean, I can't remember, someone told me that it's only like 13 states that have AAA bond ratings or something. But the District of Columbia has a AAA bond rating. And, you know, our educational system has improved. We are working on all the things that people thought that we could not do. We are doing them, and we are doing them very well. So I don't think there's any argument left other than the partisan argument. Unless Senator Cotton said the other day we were the wrong kind of people. I don't know if any of you read that, but you might want to Google that. He said, we're the wrong kind of people. We're not, the people in Wyoming, they are miners, they are industrialized people, and we are lobbyists and lawyers and, the bad kind of people. So, maybe that's the new argument. I don't know.
Ross Dakin from New Jersey. Ross, are you still there?
I am, yes.
You're muted.
Thank you both for speaking with us. I'm just curious what your view is on the future of federal, local government relations in a post-COVID, perhaps post-Trump world.
You mean the industry of government relations consultancy? Is that what you're referring to?
Less on government consultants and more fundamental to the relationship between those that are governing, either political electeds or cooperation between federal, state, and local governments.
Oh, I think the relationships between the state and federal government relations, and if you're being kind and subtly asking about the mayor's relationship with the president, I think our relationship with the federal government, I think our relationship is fine. We talk to the mayor has spoken to the Secretary of the Interior probably 3 times within the past week because we know we work together. If there are fireworks on the mall on the 4th of July, the District of Columbia Police, the District of Columbia Department of Public Works will be picking up trash. We will be working with the Park Service to make that event successful and to make sure that the people that come into town are protected and have access to get in and get out. So the rhetoric that you hear, the back and forth, that has nothing to do with the operation and the partnership that we have. I talk to the chief of police all the time. His partnership with all of his federal partners, the FBI, the DEA, the Park Police, the Capitol Hill Police, they get along very well. There is no dissension at all. But there may be tweets, but I wouldn't judge that as what's going on with the city and with the, at the end of the day, most people are grown-ups and they do their jobs. We all have jobs to do and we do them well.
Thank you. Next question, Presidential Innovation Fellow Michelle Holko has a question. Michelle.
Hi, yes, thanks so much for being here and for your wonderful perspective. So my name is Michelle Holko. I'm a Presidential Innovation Fellow, currently working with the All of Us research program. And I love hearing, that Mayor Bowser is such a big fan of technology. I would love to hear from you both if you have any specific recommendations of how technology could potentially improve, the way that government reaches its citizens, especially in DC.
I'll let Mayor Williams talk about that. Well, we know that one of the problems with our residents is that we need to make sure that the internet deployment, it covers the entire city. We have gaps and we have to make sure those gaps are filled. And I can tell you that we talk about that all the time. And we have been working with some companies to try to make sure we get those gaps filled.
Next question.
That's great to hear.
I'm sorry. I'm cognizant of time, but we do have robust questions, maybe a couple more. Clara Tao. Clara?
Hi, I just wanted to ask about the impact of small businesses when post-COVID. You know, what is being done, and how do you think it'll impact the city and the makeup of people severely impacted by the shutdowns?
Well, Mayor Williams, you want to talk about that?
I think there's been real damage. If you look at, I mean, it's bobbed up and down, but if you look at the markets, the best performers have been, you know, the top tier in the NASDAQ tech companies. You're talking about tech. Then you have the large cap public companies doing well. But as you get down the line into private, you know, from public down into private proprietorships, into small businesses, there's been huge damage in the economy. So the big question, and I talked about this earlier, uncertainty is, you know, how quickly can we recover and repair this damage? Is this going to be like more like, you know, the hurricane hits the coast and we've got to bring these businesses back online, or is it more serious and more systemic and longstanding? That's a big question.
And, you know, the mayor talks about this in the economic development team. We've been talking about this, is that we know that some small business won't make it back. They may not be able to sustain this, but we have grants, and we're trying to help sustain small businesses as much as possible. But as the mayor said, we probably will not be able to save them all.
And next, Paul Farmer. Paul, if you can tell us what your background is too, before your question.
Paul Farmer, and I'm a city planner, and I taught a lot of city planning in terms of regional economies. Worked in Pittsburgh during our steel collapse and had to figure out ways to bring that out of it's that economy into another one. So I guess I think of cities all the time as metropolitan economies. And certainly in the last 20 to 30 years, the metropolitan growth in the U.S. has been quite concentrated. And DC is one of those areas that over that period of time has done very well. With the presence of the federal government, I was just wondering if that perhaps puts DC in a somewhat different category moving ahead with the longer term pandemic issues that we're going to be dealing with. And particularly, does it give DC an opportunity to perhaps provide a great deal of leadership to other metropolitan areas around the country that may not have some of the, either the growth to build on or some of the strengths that DC might have? So any comments from either of the speakers about thinking in terms of metropolitan leadership and how DC might be able to capitalize on that?
I think the mayor and the metropolitan leadership showed initiative in the Metro Now funding, where the District, Maryland, and Virginia agreed to long-term capital plan for Metro, which was part of their joint effort to bring Amazon to the region. I think they alone, among all the different states, had the best regional cooperation in bringing Amazon here. I think that's just one example. I think part of the reason why there's regional support for statehood is because people realize that it'd be better to have 6 senators and 4 senators. People finally got that, which is great. So I think it's an example of regionalism. I've been involved with the regional partners in a bus transit study because we've been talking about disparate impact. All the studies show a high correlation between poverty and lack of access to transportation and jobs. So I think the districts and the rest of the DMV are definitely stepping up in terms of regional coordination on a meaningful level, not just going to meetings and, kumbaya, but really trying to move the needle on some important objectives. We can do it in transportation and economic development. We can start doing it in housing and other areas that are critical.
All right, I think we have time for one last question from Jackie Kazil, also former Presidential Innovation Fellow.
Hey, so my question was about the possible funding cut from Connect DC. I don't know if that has happened or is going to happen, but I heard it was possibly, I think it was somewhere around 600,000 with respect to the budget. And I'm wondering, in the context of COVID right now, if you know where that ended up landing. I'm not sure where the budget process is right now. And with the context of COVID, is that still going to be cut, and has anything changed in that respect? Because I think it's really important for people, especially now, to be connected and not disconnected. But I also understand budgets are hard, so I want to, be respectful that sometimes there's going to be cuts, and sometimes they're not going to be in places that, that's going to make everyone happy.
I cannot tell you that I know off the top of my head what happened to the budget of Connect DC, but I can tell you that that is a priority for the mayor. So, but I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a lot of choices. And as you probably know, this budget is with the council right now. So even it may not matter what the mayor has in there. The council has the liberty to change it. So if you want to check with me in about a week, I can tell you if it survived.
Thank you. And that was our last question. I'll turn it over now to Britt McCandless, digital producer at CBS News.
Okay.
Thank everyone for their very interesting questions, thought-provoking questions, and a huge thank you to Ms. Beverly Perry and Mayor Anthony Williams for joining us for this very insightful look into our nation's capital. And on topic of our nation's capital, I wanted to share the results of the poll, thanks to the folks who participated in the poll. And we have some fans of the mayor and her handling of things in DC at the moment. So that's exciting. And really, I think it's a very good reflection on Beverly. But thanks to folks, this was a terrific turnout, and I'll turn it back over to Coach.
Thanks, Britt. And thanks, Mayor Williams. And thank you, Beverly Perry and John Paul Farmer and everybody else that joined us. Thank you, Judge Webster. I see Linda there. Great to see you. Hi. So we'll all see you back at the next IFE, hashtag IFE online in a few weeks. And thank you to the IFE team, Elise and Maggie and Dr. Amy King. Thank you all.